He leapt to the top step from the side so he wouldn't see him coming. Dressed in faded black jeans, a clean white shirt open 2 buttons in the neck, brown work boots, and a thick brown leather belt, Tony greeted us heartily. "Hey, what's happening, people?" He offered up a 12-pack of Dixie bottles in front of his chest. "Where's Phil?" he asked, puzzled. "She went to the front door, kiddo." "Oops, I rang it before I remembered." "Back door first," Carol reminded him. Tony chuckled to himself and crossed to the fridge. He swung the door open and put the box of bottles down at his feet. He tore the box open and put 5 or 6 more bottles in with Phyllis's. While his head was still in the fridge, he yelled out another greeting. "Michael!" His voice was muffled, projected into the refrigerator. "How about a Dixie?" He pulled back, kicked the rest of the 12-pack to the wall under Phyllis's watercolor, and swung the refrigerator door shut. "Best beer around," he declared. He popped the 2 caps and held the bottle forward. I took it and stood to shake his hand. "Good to meet you again, Tony." "Good to meet you, my friend," Tony said, with more emphasis on the you than on the friend, looking around for a chair for himself. Then he turned to Carol and gave her a focused greeting. "Carol, my dear, where have you been my whole..." Cute. He sees her an hour earlier and then treats her like a lost love. Nice move. A little corny, but nice move. Carol nodded at Tony and smiled only enough to humor him. "So, Mike," Tony began, still standing, "what's your story? You live like a mouse. I haven't heard a single noise out of you since you moved in." Then Phyllis came back. She asked Tony if it was him at the door. "Yeah, sorry about that, I rang it before thinking." Phyllis approached him and gave him a lightly pressed cheek. "Who, you? Do something before thinking?" "Oh yeah, that's me. Tony the impetuous," Tony said with a laugh. Phyllis then grabbed a 4th chair from the other room. "Oh, I'm just settling in, you could say," I told Tony once he was seated, picking up where he left off and keeping the conversation light. "I've been working a lot." The last part was an embellishment. If 40 hours a week was a lot, then sure, I worked a lot. "Of course," Tony said approvingly. "So what do you do?" "I work for a company that makes educational videos for school kids," I told him. EdTech also sells its products to police and fire departments, but there was no reason to start listening. As Tony and I re-began our conversation, Phyllis returned to the counter and Carol stepped up next to her. They worked on dinner and talked in lower tones so the 2 conversations could run simultaneously. I went on a bit about work, though not much. I couldn't be caught rambling, but I also wouldn't brush the question off. "Cool," Tony exclaimed with polite enthusiasm. He seemed preoccupied by other thoughts. "Sounds great." He paused. "So you produce videos yourself?" "No, I didn't produce videos. It's a small company, so we all do a little bit of everything." "Just say no, right?" Tony laughed and swallowed some beer. "Or is there more to it these days?" "Funny you should ask," I told him, suddenly inspired to explain something. "It's more like, hey kids, if you don't say no, you'll get severe acne, your teeth might fall out, and you might even die. But the zits scare the kids a lot more than death does, so a lighter message is sometimes all you need." "Of course, kids aren't stupid." Tony smiled and nodded and drank again from his Dixie. Then he looked over his shoulder to the ladies. "Hey, what's up back there?" I was both impressed and disinterested by Tony. He had a rough look about him, which I figured was deliberate, mostly on account of his 3 or 4 day beard. But he also had a well-advanced receding hairline. His eyes were small for a big man, and his indistinct nose was like the nose of a quiet 15-year-old, though set in a heavy, filled-out face. Oddly contrasting, His mouth was wide and gregarious and fairly well compensated for his unprominent nose and eyes. "A few more minutes on the fish, then we eat," Phyllis answered. With that, she reopened the oven door and put the broiler pan with the fish back in the top rack. Everything on the stovetop was steaming, and the red fish needed a little more time on the second side. 2 minutes. "Help me here, guys," Carol said, leaning over the table. "Pick up the silverware so I can put these placemats down." We did as instructed. With 3 sets of arms, the table was instantly set. "Can I light these candles, Phil?" asked Carol over her shoulder. "You bet." Carol turned to think about where matches might be, and while her back was turned, Tony lit the candles with his Zippo. "There you go," he told Carol. Carol turned just as Tony dropped the lighter back in his shirt pocket. "Oh, thanks," said Carol. "Carol is always a little surprised when I turn out to be useful for something," Tony said across the table, picking up his beer again. "Oh, yeah?" I asked him. "No, it's not so," Carol interjected. "Don't listen to him. Tony likes people to think I'm a bitch for some reason." "Bitch? Who said anything about a bitch?" Tony answered her while still looking across the table. "I love the woman, and look at the way she treats me." "Stop it, you two," said Phyllis, stepping back to the oven door with her mitts on. "Hey, Mike, come over here and help me test this." Glad to be pulled away from the table, I stepped to the counter at Phyllis's left and peeked into the fish as she pried it apart with the butter knife. "Done," I thought. "Definitely," agreed Phyllis. "Now hand me that stack of plates down there." I stepped behind Phyllis to get to the plates she'd taken out, but Carol was closer and picked them up first. "Sit, Mike. We'll serve you guys." "Hey, Mike, so what do you think of Phyllis?" asked Tony loudly and suddenly. I was rounding the table behind him to get back to my seat. "Who, this Phyllis?" I asked, reflecting the question for a second. Why is this guy baiting me? I wondered. "This Phyllis?" I said again. "She's great," I told Tony benignly. Nice question. "Why do you ask? Don't you think she's great?" No reason," Tony answered quickly. "I was just thinking how lucky we are for having these 2 good-looking women cook dinner for us." "Well, sure," I agreed tactfully. "Let's toast to it. Here's to the best-looking women I know in Mid-City." I held out my drink and admired myself for my spontaneous choice of words. "Amen," Tony toasted. "Jesus, guys," began Phyllis. "You're not going to talk like this all night, I hope." "How sweet," said Carol, coming to mine in Tony's defense. "Come on, Phyllis, admit it. We've got 2 of the sweetest guys in town here tonight. Tony, I'm sorry I snapped at you. Here." Carol leaned over and kissed his cheek before he saw it coming. A kiss. Why would he get a kiss? Phyllis then turned with 2 plates of food. She put one down in front of me and one at the empty place to her left. She turned back around and in a second or 2 came to the table with the 2 other plates, one for Tony and one for Carol, who sat down across from me. Phyllis took off her apron and tossed it on the counter. She had small breasts, but they were braless that night, and revealed in perky silhouette by her black t-shirt. I smiled a polite smile that dinner guests give to hostesses, then looked at Carol. Carol raised her beer bottle. "All jokes aside, here's to new and old friends." "Yeah, to new and old friends," repeated Tony. Phyllis and I said cheers simultaneously, and everyone took a drink.